高兴哈，我们请到杨美惠教授，还有我们的黄树明院士，我们的张前所长，然后还有我们的Scott Simon Doctor 哈，还有我们的周月老师，还有我们全所的同仁，还有所内外的贵宾们哈，真的非常欢迎大家来到这个场次哈。那我们今天呢是很高兴，是我们第8届李亦园院士纪念讲座，还有本所70周年所庆研讨会哈共同的开幕。那非常的高兴，今天真是风和日丽哈，很棒哈。在这个重要时刻呢，能够跟大家一起真的是非常的高兴。那我们很高兴。首先非常高兴的是呢，我们能够邀请到杨美惠老师呢，担任我们民族所的这个第8届李亦园院士讲座的讲者哈。这是我们所里哈，我们的张前所长，还有我们的宗教生活研究群共同努力邀请的成果，很不容易哈，非常的期待哈。关于其实我们为了这个李亦园纪念讲座，我们也筹备了其实有2场的读书会。然后对于这个杨美惠老师今天要跟我们分享的东西，也非常的期待。那我本来准备了一大堆要介绍杨老师，后想不对，我要留给张雪老师介绍。那我这边就先停在这哈。好，那我要讲的是，我们接下来今天下午开始好的2天半。我们有我们的所庆研讨会哈，然后这一次的所庆研讨会呢，真的是我们因为所里70周年，那现在所里呢是26个人，可是呢我们非常高兴的，我们有29篇论文哈，就如同我刚刚讲的，包括我们所里每一位同仁都有发表之外呢，我们也请到黄树明院士，还有Dr. Simon 哈，还有我们的周月老师，然后来跟我们一起分享。我相信呢，在这个3天的研讨会哈，就是有一个很重要的，我们的研讨会的名称叫做“扎根田野的思考”。从这个名字大家就知道了，我们民族所的根在哪里哈？我们民族所的根就在田野哦，就在田野。那就是说田野呢，它不是一个土地而已哦，它更是一种跨越时空的思想跟理路哈。然后我们在那边产生一些共识，然后呢产生一些社会实践，它是很不容易的一种精神的代表。好，那我们知道像现在数位科技哈，还有这个人工智慧非常的快速的发展。那你说 AI， 我相信大家都已经很广泛的在使用 AI。那 AI 可以协助翻译论文啊，甚至也可以帮读论文啊，整理重点啊，编辑我们的图表，分析影像。然后呢，甚至呢，它还可以在你的我们现在已经有很多研究呢，是用 AI 参与研究，那这样子一起好像做一些事情这样子。可是呢 ，AI 是完全无法取代田野的，田野是无法被取代的哈。为什么呢？因为我们只有在这种田野的亲身经验呢，我们才能够透过我们的眼耳鼻舌身意，然后我们才能去产生一些想法、一些共识，然后呢，我们才能够触摸到这个文化的细微的那种不可言说的，然后我们尝试要表达的那种微光。好，这是很重要的。这就是我们为什么这次所庆研讨会把它定位在扎根田野，就是让我们趁着这一次70周年所庆的时候呢，再做一次反思。好，再做一次反思。那你说，这个心理学家在那边讲田野，好，我们也是有田野了哈，只是我们的田野经验也许是不太一样。但是如果说，如果说同仁们有兴趣的话，我这一次的也会发表我的田野，就是如何的在夫妻跟他们玩闹的这种田野经验哈。好，那这个70年来哈，我们的这个民族所的研究呢，其实留下了各种各样的一个经验哈。那今天呢，我们呢透过此次的研讨会，我希望呢，我们民族所呢能够激励我们更多的这种跨世代的对于未来的研究的一些想象。好，那我们呢，不只是立足于我们的传统，我们呢更要放眼我们的未来。好，这就是我们这一次希望我们在这个多元挑战的社会中呢，展现我们对这个民族所能够产生的一些力量。好，那最后呢，祝福大家幸福健康，3天的这个研讨会我们顺利圆满。好，谢谢。 首先呢，我要谢谢这个杨美惠老师特别来。然后呢，这次我们因为70周年所庆呢，我们其实有准备了那个我们的所庆的礼物，然后我要送给这个那个杨老师。这是我们的所庆，就是我们的角色，就是大概全部。然后呢，这个我们创作的话，李亦园先生创作的1955年李亦园先生本身先生的第一本，他的有关他经历一个有关的事情。然后呢，这是我们今天的写作会的内容。然后我们还有这一次是因为大家很多人这两个东西呢非常有意思，这是就是代表我们如果那个杨老师有他是在后头，然后呢，这是我们的既有的然后呢，这是在如果有电话手机啊，好，介绍到这里。我们接下来就要来大家来留意一下，然后对杨老师您坐在中间。还有方面是后面的你都来了，是大家在后面。
欢迎。因为最近都在国外参加活动，所以没有去。
久仰。
喂，
谢谢你的 email， 我没来得及回答。还是要见到了。呀。
各位来宾、各位同仁，大家早。如果按照表定时间是可以休息5分钟，不过所长说等于一休息大概回不来了，所以我们就开始了哈。今天我们很高兴杨美惠老师从去年跟我们联络到现在，决定一个议题，那然后我们准备了2次的这个读书会哈，丁仁杰老师还有我做报告，然后我们对杨老师从以前去北京，我还是正式的报告一下好了。杨老师他现在是那个50% 的 faculty member in the Department of Religious Studies， 那另外50% 是在 Department of East Asian Language and Cultural Studies Santa Barbara UC Santa Barbara。然后他1981年呢在北京大学做交换学生，1982年呢就开始在北京做城市调查，然后1986年呢就以这个北京的这个调查，他写的书就拿到先拿到这个 UC Berkeley 的这个人类学的博士。1993年呢，他有机会到温州调查的是乡村的经济，仪式经济。那结合了北京跟温州的这个材料呢，他在1994年出版了英文的著作，第1本哈是 Gift, Favors and Banquet: The Art of Social Relationship in China， 是1994年。这本书呢，1997年就得到美国民族学会优秀著作奖。2005年呢，在台湾就出版了中文版。2009年在大陆出版了这个简体字版。书名就是《礼物关系学与国家：中国人际关系与主体性建构》。那在大陆版的这个书后面呢，杨老师增加了一个拔哈，就是关系学的韧性跟运作空间。他特别呢针对当时的很多国内外的学者对关系学的一些著作，他做了一个很好的 defend。这篇文章就让整个这个关系学的研究成为非常的专业，非常的这个可以说带动了一股这个潮流啦哈。然后之后杨老师主编了4本学术文集哈。第1本是跟女性相关的 Spaces of Their Own: Women's Public Sphere in Transnational China。第2本是关于宗教的，就是 Chinese Religiosities。第3本呢就是跟今天有关，是这个环境的哈 Chinese Environmental Ethics。那还有第4本呢是最新的，杨老师在去年2024年编的是 Anthropology of Ascendant China， 就是在土起中要起中的这个中国大陆的一本书哈。那他自己的著作哈，除了刚刚提到的那个 Gift, Favors and Banquet， 有第2本书，这是2020年的，是 Re-enchanting Modernity, Ritual Economy and Society in 温州。那杨老师自己呢，还有这个 audio interview 啊，做了这个他自己也有访问别人，然后也接受别人访问的一些 film， 一些这个纪录片，也非常的有名哈，都是有人要订购的。好，那我们有跟杨老师讨论说，贯穿在他从北京到温州，到这个宗教。然后到台湾的这个慈济，就是花莲的这个慈济功德会的这个宗教的研究，然后到今天要讲的题目哈，就是尼泊尔中部的一个省份呢，这个赤颈鹤 Chasing Sarus Crane， 尼泊尔中部兰比尼省份的这个赤颈鹤栖息的地方，就是这些鹤呢，它不栖息在国家公园。它反而呢栖息在人多的几个村庄，那会牵涉到这个河川啊、稻田啊、宗教啊、地景啊等等的哈。所以我们有跟杨老师讨论说，在这样不同的田野不同的这个关怀的主题的底下，杨老师其实一直注意一个 核心的一个议题哈，就是怎么样用非政府的、非制度化的、非体系、非国家的那种比较隐微的权利来达到，不是全部说 civil society 好，不是就 civil society 有很多种，那么在中国大陆的表现方式可能是不一样，可是这些等于是 NGO 啦，或者是不同的这种隐微的表现，不管是在环保、在经济、仪式经济、礼物经济，都是可以跟国家的资本主义制度化的经济做一个对话抗衡，或者是小市民的表现哈。那所以今天呢，我们也期待杨老师，他怎么样用完全不同于原来中国的台湾的慈济的题目，然后来讲述他新的发现哈。那我们欢迎杨老师。
谢谢张教授给我非常仔细的介绍。那么我今天呢，我先用那个汉语说几句，然后呢，我会转到英语，所以请大家原谅一点，因为学术话语我可能是英语还是比较舒服一点，就说的比较那个自信一点那么我是台北出生，所以每次回到台湾都有那种亲切感觉得非常荣幸被邀请来做这个非常重要，在中央研究院民族所这个地方很有历史的一个人类学的一个场所，所以很荣幸那么我今天讲的课题呢是我第一次讲一个非汉人文化的一个课题，所以呢当然有一点紧张因为我当然对印度教还是需要学会很多那么但是呢我想我在温州常常听老百姓讲方言，我反正也听不懂，我还需要让那个讲那个普通话的人来给我做翻译，所以呢这个也差不多嘛而且他们现在教育水平也慢慢的提高，在农村，在尼泊尔所以他们有一些人也会说英语，所以我就用英语跟他们交流那么我今天讲的也是一个我从来没有设计过的，就是人与非人之间的关系。好那么很多人好像想知道为什么选择到兰比尼选择去研究这种大鸟呢？这是原来我是感谢台湾慈济功德会他们那个赞助我到兰比尼，因为我听说我本来是在花莲和台北研究他们的回收制度做得很好然后这个也是那个 civil society从下而上的这个草根的那个活跃力然后我听说他们在兰比尼佛陀的诞生地他们开发了一个新的点，那我当然一定要去看一看，所以我是这样子但是那个地方呢，他们慈济功德会才刚开始建起来，所以呢他们主要的注意力是放在农村的教育因为那边很穷，所以很多小孩子很需要帮助，那慈济功德会就做了这种帮助但是同时呢我就注意到有这种大鸟，这个非常有意思的，然后我就开始了解这个大鸟然后这个我的课题 Chasing the Sarus Cranes 不是说我就是追他们，因为这个对野生物很不友好，对吧我的意思就是说我经常骑着摩托车后面骑的朋友的摩托车接近他们，然后到了一定的程度我们要下来 走路再继续的接近它们，因为这些鸟很灵的，它们会感觉你来，它们不认识你的话，它们会飞走。所以呢，但是我的感觉是经常是追它们所以不是吓唬它们，但是是接近它们。那我现在就开始用英文说了哈。Anthropology，在这个 Anthropocene 的这个时代呢 ，Anthropology can no longer adhere to its anthropocentrism. Born out of the European Enlightenment as a new scientific field of inquiry, anthropology did not escape the European Renaissance humanism that elevated human subjectivity, values, and will, as noted by Rosie Braidotti in her book, Posthumanism. If for Bruno Latour and Philippe Descola, 我知道Philippe Descola 来过，2年以前来过这边，我也在这里。If for them the separation and opposition between nature and culture, these two categories laid the foundations for modernity, then anthropology was one of the most instrumental fields of knowledge for this separation. By overprivileging humans as the sole inventors of culture, language, learning, tool use, and emotions, we were able to create an independent field of cultural anthropology. Today, as we see in Asia, Asian economies and societies have embraced the European nature-culture split in order to outdo the West in its modernity and urbanization and industrialization. And Asian economies have proven themselves not only adaptable, but adept, indeed alarmingly so, at competing and excelling in the age of capital-O-C, in polluting and decimating our planetary biosphere. Despite the modern Asian embrace of this particular industrial anthropocentrism that emerged out of the West, ancient Asian religious imaginaries and ontologies still manage to get reproduced, although somewhat in the marginal areas. Thus, the project of what's been called decolonizing anthropology cannot just have a geopolitical valence. Okay, it's to decolonize anthropology, we must entail the search for new modes of reconnecting and repairing our relations with non-human domains. In this endeavor, there's a great wealth of ancient ontologies and religious imaginaries that offer rich resources. And the new field of multi-species studies have emerged as an area of inquiry that, quote, aims to critically reconfigure the human while problematizing and working across nature-culture dualisms. So multi-species studies seeks to embed human actors within larger networks of relations with the non-human biotic worlds or the inorganic realms of geology, climate, aquatic and soil landscapes. While multi-species studies eagerly crosses this disciplinary and methodological divide between the humanities, social science, and natural science, and science and technology studies, one shortcoming that I've noticed is that it has an overall secular outlook. When much of our contemporary human populations are religious, okay? So multi-species studies tends to overlook how re-embedding the human into natural environments often entails negotiating with supernatural agencies. The modern category of culture was created not only by splitting it off from nature, Okay, here we are. So culture, the modern category of culture, split off from not only nature, but also split off from the divine world, the sacred world, the supernatural. Before modern times, the history of human relations with the natural world was conducted through religious cultures, where natural things were often alive or animated as divinities. So we can enrich multi-species studies by turning to the approach of actor network theory. And I think that Adam Chow has read your piece about the Taiwanese relations with pigs, giant pigs, of which Bruno Latour was a major exponent. Latour's argument is that too often the social sciences assumes the pre-existence of something called society or social forces. I think I need to go back. How do we go back? Yeah, go back. Yeah, there. So he's saying that we have a tendency to reify or assume that society is just there, okay? And rather than questioning how social collectivities come into being, for Latour, the social is not restricted to human agents or human interrelatedness, but includes non-human actors, from natural formations as well as technological actors, which should all be assigned agency. So long as a thing, force, idea, image, or statue or text can trigger, inspire, rechannel, or transform social actions, it can be said to exercise agency. The category of non-humans includes, this is a quote from Latour, he says, things, objects, and beasts. And in another place, he said, microbes, scallops, rocks, and ships, as well as tools, sewer networks, transportation devices, texts, and economic goods. So one sociologist who was trying to defend Latour against critics thought he was being very generous, but he denied that Latour had in mind any supernatural entities as the non-human. Okay, so here I have a quote from Latour, which directly, disputes his claim that Latour didn't have in mind supernatural entities. So Latour says in his book of 2005 about actor network theory, all nature's cultures are similar in that they simultaneously construct humans, divinities, and non-humans. We construct both our human collectives and the non-humans that surround them. In constituting their collectives, some mobilize ancestors, lions, fixed stars, and the coagulated blood of sacrifice, animal sacrifice. These are Shang Dynasty and the Aztecs and human sacrifice. In constructing ours with modern science, we mobilize genetics, zoology, cosmology, and hematology. Look at blood. Okay, so here Latour is saying that human social formations, such as Australian totemic clans, studied by Durkheim, and the clans of Northwest Coast Native America, which I do have a long essay about Northwest Coast indigenous cultures, in terms of potlatch and ritual economy. used non-human animal totems, whether the physical animal or images of linguistic representations, to conjure up the social identification and collective activities and obligations that create social relatedness. So modern science may have rigorous laboratory-controlled empirical methods. Nevertheless, it also raids elements of the non-human natural worlds to establish social relatedness. So whether it's bears establishing Kwakiutl bear clans, or the apical ancestor Wang that I've written about in my book about Wenzhou lineages, or the goddess Ganga in India of the sacred river, who has such an enormous role in creating the shared culture and identity of Hinduism, or the American eagle for the modern nation state of the United States. We are defining relations in terms of non-human things serving as major actors in social formations. So actor network theory merely wishes to acknowledge and make non-human agency more salient in what we call society and social interaction. So the non-human agency I'd like to focus on today are these large and impressive giant birds. And called Sarus cranes. Here, what I also am suggesting is, with this notion, borrowed notion of symbiosis and symbiogenesis from evolutionary biologist Lynn Margulis, as well as Donna Haraway, who took up Margulis's notion. They've both written about how two or more species can live entangled, interdependent, even conflictual lives, but they create a collectivity, a social collectivity. So I'll suggest that I detect a growing symbiosis between humans and Sarus cranes in Lumbini, Nepal. My lecture also suggests that while this symbiosis draws from and recuperates ancient Buddho-Hindu religious culture, the nature of this symbiosis may be shifting too. There's social change going on into new plateaus of nature, culture, religion, and environmental forces. So here, I'm going to just show you in sections about the lives and agency of Sarus cranes in the Lumbini area of southern Nepal. So the setting, population, and key question that I have. Here is, so down here is Lumbini. See my arrow here? Down at the border. In fact, I was so close to the border, which has no fence, with India, that I got a visit from the border police, who wanted to know what I was doing there and wanted to see my passport. So, just hopefully I was not an interloper from mainland China doing spy activities or whatever. So it's right there on the border, and so it also shares with the heat of the Gangetic plains of India. So the technical Latin name is Grus antigone, and this is from the most recent systematic study carried out in fieldwork in 2023. They published in the next following year. They note that there are 690 Sarus cranes left in Nepal, and 652 cranes, or 94% of them, choose to live in 3 districts of Lumbini province: Rupandehi, Kapilavastu, and Nawalparasi. on the Indian, they're all on the Indian border, very hot and wet. Most of these photos I took myself, and some I got on the web. So the Sarus crane habitat used to spread across the whole Terai area of Nepal. So Terai, Nepal is divided conceptually into 3 geographical cultural zones. The southernmost down here, bordering with India, is called Terai, and it's very hot. And so, most people think of Nepal as the giant high Himalayas, but here it's very hot and the lowlands. Then there's the mid-level area in the middle, and then there's the Himalayan high elevation areas. So here you see, according to the latest study, that they counted 200 in Kapilavatthu, which is the where the palace of Gautama Buddha lay, his father's palace. Okay, and he lived there until the age of 29. And here in Lumbini is where the bulk of, that was where I was, the bulk of the cranes reside, and then 70 in Nawal Parasi, and 33 way in this area. So there are 2 national parks. Chitawan here is the earliest national park established in the early 20th century. It used to be the royal hunting grounds. But here, any wild animal or bird in Chitawan are protected by law. And Bardia also is another national park, but they found no Sarus cranes in these protected areas. Okay, so why is it that these cranes want to hang out with humans? Humans are very unpredictable. They're kind of dangerous. So they are very tall. They are the tallest flying birds in the planet. So 1.8 meters. And in 2010, a study counted only 300 cranes in Nepal. But in 23, they counted 690. So that's very encouraging. Okay, but we don't know how they were counting it in 2010. Maybe they weren't as systematic. So my key question then is, why do 94% of today's Sarus cranes choose to live in Lumbini today? Okay, I'm giving them agency. These birds are making the choice of hanging around this area where lots of humans are gathered. Yeah. Okay, so they don't want to hang out in the wilderness areas of the 2 national parks. So let me get at this question, which I hope to answer in 3 sections. So I'll start with looking at water, climate, food, and landscape. I'll look at predators. I'll look at human economic development. And finally, I'll examine the most important area of the human Buddho-Hindu culture. Okay. So these cranes love water. Okay. And of course, they like natural rivers and streams and lakes, or human-built reservoirs. And here's the Dano River. You can see a crane flying by, so it's not very visible here. But this is the Dano River, one of the major rivers flowing north to south to India. And then you have lots of streams and so on. And wetlands. So this is rice paddy, wet rice agriculture. And very similar to what you see in Taiwan. Lots of water here. And look, here's a crane that builds a raised platform of twigs and reeds in the middle of water. And they feel safe that way because they can look far away. And they can also hear from the wave action of the water. They're very alert that somebody is approaching. And so here So they always buy water, which of course is going to be a long-term problem because this whole area is also losing their water. I'll go into. So let's look at the climate. So this area, the Terai front on the Gangetic Plain of northern India, and it's very hot tropical climate, very different from Himalayan hilly lands or high mountains to the north. So they have pretty much 3 seasons. Winters, you see where they grow wheat, see the temperatures there. Summers, basically everyone is deflated and wilted during the summer. It's so hot, and it's dry season. Temperatures between 20 to 48 centigrade. Very unbearably hot, and they let their fields, the farmers let their fields lie fallow. So here is where I went to AI, and AI is really not always reliable. AI got the temperature wrong because I can report from what people told me in the past 3 to 4 years what the highest temperature was. AI has not been updated, so it really lags behind. It's much hotter now. You look at this temperature, it's pretty horrible. And then the monsoon season, it's the lots of rain, heavy rainfall, and this is the rice planting season. It's also the crane mating and breeding season. So this is the time when the cranes are very happy. So here's a crane in the middle of a human rice paddy. You see there's a crane sitting on a nest. They usually lay 1 or 2 eggs, and the male and the female take turns guarding the nest while the other one goes hunting. Wow, that's the nest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cover.
Okay. So you see here, you see their huge wingspans, and you see the eggs that they take care of. This is their diet. Small fish, which they catch in the rice paddies or streams, insects. They also are very good at raiding local farmers' fields. So I've had many farmers tell me that, oh, they stole my sweet potatoes. They love sweet potatoes, but it's okay. I can spare some for them. So the local farmers are willing to share some with them. They also like aquatic plants, little rodents like mice, and seeds, and grains. Okay, 然后我们走了，我们不需要再。Okay, so they do have predators. Of course, the primary predator is going to be humans. This is at a local village fair. But you know, these days there's been better education and activities by environmental NGOs to educate the local people. And so it's rare that local people will kill a crane. Okay? And so back about 20, 30 years ago, there were more instances. Oh, so thanks. 20, 30 years ago, there were more instances of humans killing cranes for food. And you do still have people stealing eggs of the cranes. And that's also why the cranes like to hang around humans, because there's a kind of symbiotic relationship. When the cranes detect some predator coming in towards them at night, they will let out a big screaming and make a big ruckus. The nearby villagers will come out and look for, maybe it's some person coming in from India to steal their eggs, or other unscrupulous characters. Their eggs also get taken by snakes and pythons, and also they get attacked occasionally by these street dogs that are everywhere in Nepal and India. Another problem is indirectly human caused, and that's electric, these low hanging electric live cables. So when the cranes fly into them, they get electrocuted. And every year there's about maybe 10 to 15 cranes that die this way. Of course, the solution is to sheath the cables with some kind of plastic covering. But Nepal is a poor country, so they just haven't gotten around to doing that. Another thing that we don't have scientific studies of are the great use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides that has started since 2010. Okay, so virtually all farmers rely on this now. Okay, before they use water buffalo dung to fertilize their fields, but now it's easier to just use this, but they often have problems where people get burned, and there's spillage of the pesticides and so on. So we don't know what impact it has on the cranes. It certainly reduces their food source, the fishes and the aquatic plants and the insects and rodents that they eat. And of course, there's industrial development that is an increasing threat coming from the nearby city. There's also wetland draining to expand human habitat, so they are faced with human habitat loss. Here's a cement factory, here's a porcelain factory, and that is another view of the cement factory. And then there is increasing drought because of decreasing water due to climate change. And you wouldn't think about it, but there's also something as kind of salutary, perhaps, or innocuous as the Lumbini Development Trust. So it's the Nepalese central government that since 1985 that has been building up this area to celebrate Gautama Buddha's birthplace and encourage a global religious pilgrimage tourism. Okay, so in the building, of course, they are setting aside a lot of green land, but I haven't noticed Sarus cranes hanging around these areas. Here is the famous building that houses the exact spot. They found what they consider the birth stone, the exact spot where the Buddha Gautama was born, out of the side of Maya Devi, his mother, while she hung on to a tree. Okay, and this is the pool in which she bathed herself before and after the birth. So this is a very sacred area, and international tourists and pilgrims will come to visit. Of course, you need to house these pilgrims, and so you have fancy hotels that are being built, as well as a lot of ordinary hotels and restaurants. So that also disrupts the land. So here's a more long distance view. So it is 3 miles by 1 mile, and it's a state planned project. But I noticed that it doesn't it's not developing very fast. I noticed that 2 years after I first saw it, nothing has changed except lots of glass windows have been broken. So this is the problem of the Nepalese government, of corruption, and not doing enough for the local people. Because it's central government control, the local people get nothing out of this. All the proceeds go to Kathmandu. So it's a big pity. Okay, so now I'd like to talk about human religious culture, divine birds, gods, bodhisattvas, and Buddhas. So like I said, I first arrived in Lumbini to ostensibly look at Tzu Chi's recycling project in Lumbini. But they really hadn't gotten going, so there wasn't much to examine. So I did go with them out to the countryside a few times to look at what they were doing to promote education. They bought lots of book bags and textbooks, which ordinary farming families cannot afford. They are actually trying to build a school of their own, providing Buddhist education. But they didn't want to reveal too many details because it's a bit sensitive there. Nepal is the current government that was overthrown was more oriented to China. So Nepal's government is pushed two big guys, China to the north and India. Their big culture. But India's problem is that it's also very poor. It cannot help Nepal economically, whereas China is good at building infrastructure. It can build such good, highways. Nepal really needs more decent highways, and China also repaired the central Durbar Square that collapsed during the 2015 earthquake. So China could offer them much more, but they cannot, overtly. So anything from Taiwan has to be very low key. They don't want to offend China. So actually, all the Tzu Chi people who are there are not from Taiwan. They are from Malaysia because they don't want to make Taiwan too prominent there. So here you go. So you have this is how they live. It's very poor. People raise goats and they engage in rice and wheat agriculture. And these are, cows that you cannot kill. It's illegal. So here is the Maya Devi temple. The local people had forgotten about Buddha for so many centuries. But in 1896, a British, I think, and a German archaeologist dug up this Ashoka pillar, okay, that had Brahmi script, which so Ashoka in 3rd century BCE, not just a few hundred years after Buddha passed away. He visited that site. Subsequently, he erected that pillar, and it says this is where Buddha was born, and that's how they know this. And Xuanzang, who visited Lumbini, noted this pillar. Okay, so we have several sources. Fa Xian also noted this pillar. So these are historical records. So here, there's Maya Devi and Buddha who came out of her side, and the first 7 steps he walked on lotuses. Okay, so everybody local knows this story, even though they're Hindu culture, but it's all mixed in. Okay, And here is an elder that I interviewed with the help of a friend and local farming women. So this is how I conducted a lot of field work. And use the water that they use. They use a pump system. Okay, I'm gonna play. This has sound. You see, this is the waterbed of the Dano River, and this bridge is new. They built this bridge, which is very convenient to the local people, since their school children can cross the bridge much easier. But of course, it's disturbing for the Sarus cranes because all these very loud motorcycles go back and forth. You don't have to read such tiny writing novels. Do you now? So, recent, by this river, at dusk is where the birds come in. At dusk, you'll see the birds flying in from all different directions. They're going to spend the night on the shores of the river. They feel safe. And outside this one particular village, Lamia Hawa village, this village has a reputation for being especially friendly towards birds, not just the Sarus cranes, but they set up cardboard boxes to house sparrows. So this village has tons of sparrows flying around them because the local people really love sentient life. And so at any given day, they could have as much as 100 Sarus cranes gather on the banks of the Dano River right outside their village. And the birds actually recognize some favorites. So some of the villagers, the birds, the cranes recognize and will allow them to approach more than other humans. Okay, so these birds have a kind of symbiotic relationship and they get along. And the birds, I think, get a good deal because they can steal from the farmers without any bad consequences. So one villager said, "The cranes and us look out for each other. During the crane's breeding season, many villagers keep their eyes and ears open for interlopers who may try to steal the eggs under cover of night. The wide spaces allow the large crane bodies enough of a runway for their landings from above and their takeoffs from the ground." So, yeah, I was going to give you one example where they did good intentioned environmental NGO. They built a crane sanctuary where they rechanneled monsoon rains into this area that was pretty dry. And they thought the cranes would love it. But each time I went there were hardly any cranes, maybe one at most two. And another environmentalist said that the problem is that this area has a neighboring forest. Cranes don't like forests. They find that it's very dangerous because there are predators lurking around there. And this area also has very high, it's called Buddha grass. The local people use it to make brooms and thatched hut roofing. and this is very sharp, hard grass, and they grow very tall. So the cranes also don't like this kind of clumps of grass because it obscures their view. They want an open space where they can see, like the riverbed. They can see all around them for possible predators. There was a tendency amongst local people to blame the Muslims for stealing eggs and killing cranes. I don't know how much credence to put here. There are some Muslim communities, but Nepal is very different from India. Nepal is known for its religious tolerance, but still there is a slight prejudice against Muslims. I detected. What they said, which may be believable, is that in Muslim villages, they have a lot of slaughtering because Muslims eat a lot of meat. They'll slaughter goats and chickens and ducks and water buffalo. Okay, so you cannot slaughter a cow. That's against the law, but you can eat water buffalo. Okay, so, and then they say that all this slaughter makes these Muslim villages smell like blood, and it turns the cranes off. That seems reasonable to me to say, but I think more research needs to be done here to see whether it's just prejudice. So I generally heard very affirming remarks about Sarus cranes from the local people. One rural woman said, "I see them arriving from the sky. My heart is uplifted. I'm so happy. They have come to give us blessings and live among us." Another woman said, "When the cranes are close by, it means that our crops will flourish. They make things grow." And also a feature of the cranes is they have marital loyalty. So once they find a partner, they will stay with the partner for life. Every season does not change. And if their partner dies, the one left living will just waste away and die within a year. And it's a tragic loss. So there's a local saying that when a human dies, it's like a Hans, a crane has departed. They compare the departed soul with that of a Hans. It is really tragic, and the loss is huge and painful. And many people also call the cranes mama, which means maternal uncle or 舅舅. Okay, so similar to traditional Chinese culture, the 舅舅 is very important, right? The 舅舅 has a good relationship with the children. In a patriarchal society, the father's line is very severe and authoritarian, but the 舅舅 is always having fun with the children. So they call the cranes maternal uncle. There's also a song, local song that people have that goes something like, "Your father ate my crops." They're addressing the cranes. "Your father ate my crops. So you had better show us your dance in our field so we can get rain and a good harvest." And so during the mating season, the young male cranes will do these dances to attract a female. Okay, and so sometimes the humans singing this song will imitate the crane dance. And another person says, "We have many rivers and ponds." So, I asked him, "Why do you think that the cranes hang out here?" He said, "They love the water, but most important of all is that the local people treat them like gods and goddesses." So So there's a important. This is an ubiquitous tale that everybody told me. It's a Buddhist tale, which can be found in the Abhivish Brahmana Sutra. And it's the contest over who owns the quote-unquote swan. I'll get to the problem of translation of the terminology in a bit. So here you see the story. The story is in a textbook, elementary school, Buddhist public school textbook. And Buddha, so Devadatta, Buddha's relative, shot down a crane, or call it a swan, and Buddha saved the crane and nursed it back to health. But then Devadatta came back and said, "That's my crane, I shot it." And so Buddha's father then commissioned a council of elders to make the decision as to who owns the crane. And the elders said they would give it to Buddha, because Buddha is the one who saved the crane and gave it life, whereas the other one wanted to kill the crane. So this is a lesson that every school kid learns. And even though they're predominantly Hindu now, this is a Buddhist tale that they have incorporated into their Buddhist Hindu culture. And so the word Hansa is Sanskrit. So does it is the translation goose, swan, or crane? Sarasa in Sanskrit means lake or lake bird. Okay, and Hansa in Sanskrit, according to the local archaeologist Visanta Bidari, who I befriended, he says, people tell this story, but Hansa in Sanskrit really means goose, not crane. So he kind of poo-pooed the idea that the locals love to tell about the Sarus crane. Okay, I looked up the Sanskrit English dictionary, which dates to 1899. I have a colleague who studies ancient Buddhism, and it says that Hansa means goose, gander, swan, flamingo, crane, or mythical bird in Rig Veda, which can separate milk from water when they are mixed, or good from evil. And it also refers to the transport vehicle of deities such as Brahma, Saraswati, the god of wisdom, and many other gods. They ride on cranes or swans. Okay. And for the local people, they speak a local language called Awadhi, which is close to Hindus. It's Hindi. They are on the Indian border. And according to the locals, the term Hans or Hansa means all three, swan, goose, and crane. They call Sarus cranes Sarahans. For the local people, Sarus cranes and swans who are not local, the swans are not local inhabitants. Okay? Swans, their basic habitat is elsewhere in Nepal. So whereas Sarus cranes are local. So for the local people, both Sarus cranes and swans are sacred birds. You cannot kill them or eat them. They do have in the local language a category called batak, which is for edible birds like goose and duck. And so these are not sacred. You can kill and eat them. So this local teacher told me that Professor Bidari is not a local person. He did not understand that for locals, Sarus cranes and swans are the same. They are sacred. There's another Jataka tale, which is a Buddhist tale. And here you see the depiction of this tale in Ajanta caves in India, which date to the 5th century Common Era, and in Borobudur, Indonesia. So this is a tale about how the Bodhisattva in a previous life was king of the East. So he commanded 96,000 geese subjects. There was a human king of Varanasi, sacred Hindu city, who wanted to meet this king of the geese. So he built a beautiful lake Manyasa. And the geese subjects, 96,000 of them, flew to this lake and they were saying, come on, to the Bodhisattva. This is a wonderful, there's so much food here, you've got to come. The Bodhisattva was reluctant to go. He knew that this was an untested place and it could be dangerous. So he went and then he was ensnared in a trap. All the geese flew away in fright, but his commander-in-chief stayed to help him, ready to give up his life. Then came a human hunter and found the Bodhisattva ensnared in the trap he had set. And because he was so impressed by the commander-in-chief, was willing to sacrifice his life and stay with the Bodhisattva, he freed both of them and brought them to the court of the king of Varanasi. There, the Goose King taught the Dharma to the king of Varanasi. And as a lot of these Jataka tales, it's about previous lives of the Buddha. So the commander who was willing to give up his life was really Ananda, who's the Buddha's primary disciple. And the hunter was Buddha's charioteer, took him out of the palace. The king of Varanasi later became Buddha's disciples, and the 96,000 geese were earlier births of Buddha's followers. So this is another tale that involves geese or crane. So here we have two Hindu gods whose mount or vahana, vehicle, are cranes or swans. So here is Lord Brahma, who created the universe. And here he does look like he's riding on a Sarus crane. That's his mount. And here is that's more like an 18th century painting to the left. Here you have Saraswati goddess, which is also a river that is now dried up. And so it's a modern picture, and she's riding on a swan. So this is the whole notion of ahimsa and non-violence. Is something that's shared by ancient Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain cultures. That one should practice non-violence towards all sentient beings. It will enable people to escape the endless wheel of rebirths, and violence accumulates negative karma. But in the Mahabharata, which is a Hindu long oral tale written down, there's a kind of equivocation. There's an equivocation about killing because, Hindu culture has many historical layers. So the earlier layers of the Veda culture, they were really into animal sacrifice. So there was a lot of bloodletting, okay? And so what the Mahabharata, which some scholars consider to be Hindus' response to the challenge of Buddhism, because Buddhism was very strong at that point. So the people who wrote the Mahabharata were Hindu Brahmins, but they had to engage with Buddhist teachings. So what they did was, on the one hand, they wanted to promote vegetarianism. On the other hand, they still wanted to preserve the eating of meat. So you can eat meat that is sacrificial meat that has been processed through ritualization, okay? So today you continue to find this tension. And in fact, if you look at the protein consumption of India and Nepal in the world at large, they're one of the lowest. So they overall, even though they're Hindu and not as consistent about banning and eating meat, nevertheless, most people are pretty vegetarian. So there is today this Gadi Mai festival, which is pretty horrifying. Every 5 years, they engage in animal slaughter of buffaloes, goats, and chickens. And so in the last one, they killed 250,000. There was like swimming in blood in this area. But they shielded the public from viewing it. But the public wants it because then they get to eat meat that is legal because it's been ritualized through sacrifice. So you can find lots of passages in the Mahabharata, especially in book 13, that advocates not killing sentient beings, okay, and being vegetarian. So I have this passage here, which I won't read right now. But so you do have a lot of vegetarianism. So now I want to turn to more modern, recent developments. So since 1985, when the Lumbini Development Trust got built, I showed you the overview of this gigantic 3 miles times 1 mile space of that giant area for tourism and pilgrimage. So this Vietnamese monk arrived here in Lumbini in the 1970s, and he had this hanging in on his wall at his temple. There's a Vietnamese. So all these different Buddhist countries and also non-Buddhist countries have invested money to build a temple. Even the Germans have a temple. Okay, so there are Buddhists in Germany, and certainly Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, all these Buddhist countries, they have to build their temple. And so Vietnam has a temple, and this monk settled in this area, and one day he found this in his little hut. And I asked him about it, and he said, it all started here. That's what he determined to do. Was he determined to stay because at that time people were very poor, and sometimes they would kill Sarus cranes and eat it. So he determined to educate the locals and about Buddhist values. It's the locals are receiving this kind of compassion towards sentient beings from their ancient, inherited, and transmitted Buddho-Hindu culture. They've also had a new infusion of international Buddhists who have settled in Lumbini and are strengthening this message and reminding them of this. So this is a festival that the Buddhists, the Vietnamese Buddhist temple hosted. And here they're really into the Sarus crane. So they've got metal statues of the Sarus cranes. And this was a festival to celebrate world peace. He was very instrumental in helping to end the civil war in Nepal in 2008. That was when the Maoists overthrew the monarchy. He brought all the contesting parties together here in Lumbini and advocated peaceful means of resolving conflict. And they also had a tree planting project. So here you see he's built in the temple this special viewing area where pilgrims and visitors can, sit and watch these Sarus cranes. So these cranes are semi-domesticated. They are free to fly in and out, but they feel comfortable with humans at close quarters. And this is the Japanese Peace Pagoda, and this is beyond the Peace Pagoda of Lumbini Development Trust, is this area. You see there's a lot of trees that the Sarus cranes don't like, right? So well-meaning environmental NGO built this area as a crane sanctuary, but it was ultimately not very successful. Okay. So here you have, I was quite amazed to find so many NGOs, okay? Ordinary citizens who take it upon themselves to found schools. There's a lot of people who have started up their own schools. And at a certain point, once the government sees that these schools are operating well and have a long-term future, the government will absorb it into the public school system, okay? And here is my friend Arjun Kurmi, who I invited to UC Santa Barbara to give a talk, but he was denied a visa, even though I got money for him. But, you know, the United States now is, you know, under new administration. So here you see he started, he's working with youth. He goes into local high schools and middle schools to educate people about endangered species, Sarus cranes and vultures and lesser adjutant. These are all different local birds. And so here you have citizen science, where they jot down notes about what they see of Sarus cranes. He's also gotten involved in toilet building. And he said that was the hardest thing he's done, to get the local people not to just squat in the fields, but to use built toilets. And that was really hard. They were very resistant. So I think that's a great accomplishment too. So here they put up this sign. Here you have the Sarus crane. This is lesser adjutant. This is a black vulture. I forget which bird. You see, these are different kinds of endangered birds. And he also has been holding a lot of educational workshops. Here he's gathered people working in local government sanitation departments and wildlife administration departments to educate them about the latest Nepali law. So if you harm one of these endangered species, you can get up to 15 years imprisonment. So most people don't know that. So he needs to spread the word around. There he is here. And you see this was paid for by USAID, which now is no more. This is they call it Nawari Buddhist. He's a Nawari Buddhist monk. So this is an indigenous Nepali Buddhism. Okay, so he has also been involved, and he works with the Lumbini Development Trust, and he and his brother called Rocky are very active in local NGO work. And he also has money from various American and Canadian sources. Okay, so I'm getting to the end now. So the Buddhist monastic population are also have a role to play in, promoting the protection of the Sarus cranes, and also these local environmental NGOs. Okay, so these are two more recent sources promoting the protection of Sarus cranes. So here today, I've tried to show that the agency of Sarus cranes in selecting the greater Lumbini area as their habitat is not merely predicated on the local climate and natural environment. Okay. Certainly, the cranes have long habituated themselves to the tropical temperatures of the Terai and the rains of the monsoon season, and the abundant rivers and lakes. But to restrict our analysis in this way would be to accede to the sharp division between nature and culture. So animal behaviorists and ecologists and environmental sciences, they want to stay on this side of the nature-culture divide, okay? So by doing multi-species studies, I'm trying to continuously cross back and forth between the nature and the culture. So we don't want to observe this separation between the natural sciences and the human sciences. It's made us suffer too much, and non-human species have suffered. So in multi-species studies, we begin to bridge these divides. We have examined how two or more species coexist, negotiate, and interact in interdependent, cooperative, and also conflictual ways across this nature-culture continuum. The crane's graceful, endearing presence for humans have, over the centuries, produced rich religious and cultural elaborations that easily mobilize these religious teachings. So here I've shown that we must give agency to these non-human sentient beings. They selected to live in this area. And I've tried to suggest why did they select to live in this area, okay? In 2018, Manmohan Chaudhary, the mayor of Lumbini Cultural Municipality, made this announcement that henceforth the Sarus crane was now the official municipal bird and mascot. So he spoke at a festival named Sarus Crane Conservation for Peace, organized by the Lumbini Development Trust. So in this one sweeping announcement, the Sarus crane's choice of this area to live in had produced a human impact and response that was religious, social, geopolitical, environmental, and multi-species all at once. So just as many kinship groupings in the past had incorporated non-human animal totemic actors or natural formations like mountains and rivers and river goddesses in the constitution of their identity and society, now we see this Nepalese municipality had chosen an endangered species to strengthen a new type of social solidarity. This type aspires to embed humans more harmoniously into the natural environment and promote better relations with non-humans. So Durkheim emphasized that religion is predicated upon a distinction between sacred and profane, and the sacred is produced by a series of prohibitions that elevate the object of aspiration. So here, humans are ethically and religiously prohibited from harming the cranes and legally sanctioned with up to 15 years jail. What actor network theory introduces to Durkheimian theory is that non-human actors, such as Sarus cranes, have agency and important roles in constituting or reconfiguring ongoing social formations. Over the past few decades, the Sarus cranes have insinuated themselves ever more centrally into the processes of local identity formation and the constitution of social and religious collectivity. In the current seal of Lumbini province, the central iconic image is still the Maya Devi temple, where Buddha was born, okay, against snow-capped Himalayan mountains. However, increasingly, we see the Sarus cranes represented in wall murals and things sold at tourist trinket shops. So they're becoming more ubiquitous. Okay, so they are exercising agency in the reconfiguration of social collectivity. And they also appear in countless tourist brochures. They're conveying feelings of belonging for the local people, and they also serve as a shorthand for visitors to identify Lumbini as a place to travel to. We can follow Lynn Margulis and Donna Haraway in calling what may be emerging in Lumbini between two species, human and non-human, as a symbiosis, an interdependent but asymmetrical relationship that, if managed well, could help the intertwined flourishing of both. Thank you.
杨老师哦，从这个 Multispecies Study， 然后到 Bruno Latour 的那个 ANT， 然后 Human and Non-Human Symbiosis 这些，我知道我们在座有好多位，我们民族所的同仁，还有今天来的那个 Scott Simon 先生哈，民族所的毕珍啊，都有做到这个植物、动物跟人的关系，然后原住民的。那我们很佩服那个杨老师在他一直不断的前进哦，做了温州，做了这个台湾的慈济的环保，而且到上海看这个慈济的环保在上海怎么做，那都是探讨这个小老百姓市民，像这个兰比尼的也是看他们怎么样在展现自己的力量，跟这个国家整个大的趋势不同的制度性的权利不同，所以我们很佩服杨老师哦，就不断的开发这个新的议题田野，然后能够把这个比较新的这个理论呢诠释得非常好。那我想我们在座也都有好多位有这样的经验哈，非常欢迎大家问问题。Open floor discussion. Your question can be in English or in Chinese. Got Simon.
Thank you very much. I found this really fascinating, and we were just talking about my research. I did some research at the Izumi Crane Center in Kyushu, so about the cranes there. But I'm thinking about the way that we interpret it. So I was wondering, you mentioned Philippe Descola at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so I was wondering if, as you're thinking about this is evolving, if you find his four ontologies and different modes of relating to be useful for you as you're thinking about these crane relations.
Yeah, I guess I'm not fond of the rigidity of the four categories. But I think that the talk that he gave, that later published, was trying to get beyond that rigidity, because he was showing that, well, with this group, it really is a mixture of animism and what is that called? The hierarchical type. Yeah, where he was trying to correct that. Yeah. So, yeah, I think structuralism, you know, his advisor was Levi-Strauss. I'm not a big fan of structuralism. So it's ahistorical and, you know, I mean, I like the idea that there are deep structures, categories of thought, but you can kind of make it too overwhelming. And yeah, so in general, I think it's useful to think about it, but I think, so for example, I try to use him to, okay, where would I put in all these different Chinese forms of religiosity? And he really can't, it does, you think about feng shui. it doesn't fit in any of his categories, right? So, yeah. So I think, yeah, you have to take it with a grain of salt.我可以用汉语的给你们回答，跟你们交流，所以你们不要不好意思。李老师，
谢谢杨老师非常精彩的演讲啊。那还有在今天演讲里面讲到非常多的这个故事，就是这个鹤，这个赤颈鹤在这个尼泊尔的文化里面，在他们的宗教里面的非常多的故事。那我的问题是从这个 Multispecies 的这个角度哈，就是这个在生态系里面人其实就是在自然里面，那么这个里面有食物网，有食物链这样哈。那刚刚我听杨老师的这个演说里面特别讲到一些故事啊，就是有讲到其实尼泊尔人会可能或者是印度人会去抓那个赤颈鹤来吃这样。那这个事情在现在的保育的运动里面当然是不被允许的啦哈。那另外还有就是说佛陀为了要这个怜悯这个就是怜悯这个鹤，所以他救了这个鹤的故事这样。那么这个吃的这个事情呢，这个各种生物互相吃来吃去这个食物链的这个事情哈，我不知道杨老师怎么看，因为它毕竟还是自然界里面的一个现象。今天因为人的文化里面或者是保育的理由，或者是宗教的理由，所以我们不吃它。可是在自然里面确实这个吃的行为是非常普遍的。
对，
那如果我们从 multispecies 的角度，就是它彼此互相这些不同的物种彼此互相依赖。这个依赖甚至不单单只是一个生态学上面的依赖，它已经进入到我们人的文化里面，我们来理解这些不同的物种，透过故事传说或者是宗教的这些教理。那我讲来讲去其实想要问杨老师，就是说怎么看这个吃这个杀戮的这个是 killing 这个事情。因为在原住民的传统，在原住民的文化里面，这个杀戮这个事情不单单只是不单单只是杀生而已，他可能是为了他自己也要活下去，或者是生存的这个问题。请问杨老师从这个赤颈鹤的故事里面怎么看？
呀，那个我们是这个 hunting and gathering 那种社会，那个是远古一直是这样，是吧 ？hunting and gathering， 我们那个时候是杀生吃肉的，然后那个游牧人，他们也是杀生吃肉的，所以这个在人类的历史上是很久的，但是后来我们有了农业革命，你就不需要依赖这个杀生，你还是可以得到那个 protein 你吃黄豆什么中国人，而且你看这些宗教，比如佛教在东亚，佛教有这么多几千年的历史，他们就是可以维持。如果你去接触那些慈济功德会的人，他们是非常坚决的素食者，我都被他们教训了很多，所以我知道，所以也是有可能的，就是还是虽然我们有这个共同的历史，但是我们也可以克服它， 但是不一定每个人都要去这样子做。这种说法在美国肯定行不通的。美国是吃肉最高的一个国家，还有什么阿根廷啊、巴西啊、澳大利亚，这都是吃肉很厉害的国家。你跟他们 promote vegetarianism， 他们很不愉快的。我还是会吃肉，所以这是一个 confession 。我就是少一点，吃的少一点。
谢谢杨老师。那一个很基础的问题，就是您文章一开始就提到了 agency 这个问题，就是您探讨物的 agency。那我还是不懂的是，像您文章中间又提到您在讨论为什么赤颈鹤选择留下来住在这些 Lumbini 的跟人住在一起，在人的社会里面住下来。那问题是一般至少我们日常语言中，我们不会说赤颈鹤选择住在哪里，甚至生物学上它就只是住在那里的。然后因为那边的社会环境让它活得下去，所以你看起来它选择住在那里，事实上它只是在那边生存下来，在生物的竞争之中，在演化论的竞争之中活了下来而已。那想请教您，到底又是怎么样讨论这个 agency？ 而且人类会选择去保护这些赤颈鹤，它是一个人类专断的选择，不是吗？人类基于自己的宗教信仰，他选择保护或不保护某一些动物。那请问在这之中，您怎么讨论这个赤颈鹤的 agency？ 谢谢。
就是大家知道，就是他们书面的材料说，在19世纪。这些 Sarus cranes 很多，然后他们就是整个尼泊尔的那个南边，从东到西都是 Sarus crane 的那个 habitat。那么现在他们越来越少了，通过现代化什么工业化呀，或者打猎啊什么，越来越少了。那为什么这一些剩下来的690个？为什么他们都选择正好是佛陀诞生的地方 Lumbini province Lumbini 3个 district 这都是佛陀那个过去的地方。 So 我觉得这不是偶然的。他们这个有一个文化的原因，因为这里的人这里的文化对他们比较好，又允许他们偷一些庄稼是吧？ So 又可以互相的保护，人也会帮助他们保护他们的蛋。我认识很多那个 farmers， 他们说他们到了那个 monsoon season， 他们下了蛋以后，他们晚上都要注意有没有什么声音，有没有坏人进来，从别的外村进来要偷这个蛋。他们帮助这些Sarus cranes， 帮助保护他们，所以有这种友情，所以我觉得是当然也有那个自然环境的，它这里水还是比较多，虽然现在有点被威胁了，但是呢，它还是有这么多河流，这么多湖，跟这个还有这个稻田。这个 wet rice agriculture 都是他们喜欢的地方，但是同时是这个人的这个文化，我觉得他们比较吸引的，所以他们决定要留在这个地方。他们完全可以跑到那个national parks， 两边有 national parks， 这没什么人的，但是可能他们觉得那里 national parks 的那些 wild predators 蛇啊什么。也有 national park， 也有 tigers， 各式各种的，可能他们觉得那里的危险，超过这个有人的环境。
谢谢杨教授哈，这个还蛮有趣的观点。我想要问一个，就是外行的问题哈。那如果说 它是那么比较友好的地方的话，那其他的鸟类呢？是不是所有的鸟类都来了？因为我们现在只有一种鸟类嘛，那其他的鸟呢，是不是也都来了？然后呢，如果怎么讲？刚刚讲到杀生的事情哦，其实我也有一种感觉，就是说，那个这是我刚刚那是各种鸟类是不是都来了哈？这是第一个问题。那第二个问题就是说，从这个那个我们刚刚看到他，比如他捕捉那个鱼啊，或者是捕捉其他的那种虫啊，那它不算杀生吗？好，这是另外一个问题哈。那第三个问题哈，我不太知道那个生的那个定义到哪里。杀生的生，好，生的定义到哪里？因为我觉得问到最后，那我们吃植物算不算在杀生啊？
我们吃植物啊，
植物是不是生啊？所以就是我觉得有一些问题它是有点套在那里的，就有时候让我有很多的疑惑，为什么我们吃素就不是杀生啊？好像这样，不好意思问了一些外行的问题。
没事第一个问题是讲那个其他的鸟对，我刚刚不是有一个那个他们放了一个 poster， 就是在这里这个 endangered species 都是鸟类的嘛，它有那个 vulture， 它有 lesser， 他们叫 lesser adjutant， 它那个嘴巴很大的呀，它我都看到了在那个，但是我的注意力还是在这个 Sarus Plains， 他们都是受到威胁，就是数量都是减少另外就是吃植物哈，吃植物好像历史上的话，佛教包括这个 Jane 他们非常严格的，我觉得做一个 Jane 非常困难，因为他们就是吃植物，他们还有很讲究的，他们不能吃有籽的植物，有籽的像那个石榴不是很多籽吗？因为这个都是可以诞生新的东西，他们就不允许吃这种石榴呀，他们是非常讲究而且现在的新的科学，他们发觉植物有感情的，植物能够表达自己就是我们过去没有这个工具来抓住植物表达他们自己，就是通过他们的那个化学，他们通过化学散发出的那个 gas， 他们可以表达自己的，他们可以警告其他的植物，哎呦，坏人来了，大家警惕或者别的有虫要来侵犯我们了，大家警惕，他们会表达出来的。所以现在有新的科学发明，就是他们有这个测量器，然后这些测量器真正的有作用，给农人，给 farmers， 他们会用这个来看他们的这个 plants， 他们种什么 crops， 这些 crops 的他们的健康是如何，所以然后他们可以采取措施帮助，所以植物确实有感情，也可以有一种可以说所谓的语言，它不是用language， 不是用那种文字来表达自己，它是用那个有一些是 sound 我们听不见的那种微波的那个 sound waves， 他们会发出去的，所以植物确实就是我们的地球是非常 alive， 是 animated。所以当然我们还得谋生，所以我在温州的他们有人告诉我，真正的有一些非常严格的那个比丘他们跑到深山，他们只吃那个已经死掉的叶子。我觉得这个 是大多数的人来说，这个是非常困难的。这个是真正的维持这种生活是可能不可能，几乎不可能。要克制自己的欲望，来只吃那个死的叶子，这样子你就没有侵犯其他的生命嘛。
好，杨老师好，就是您刚刚谈到那个吃素跟吃肉的时候，你有引一段是比较古典的文本嘛，去讲那个吃素的一个文本，所以其实我想要问的就是说，因为假如说是以广义的宗教学的研究，我们就讲说田野调查是一种研究取向，然后文本 study 是另外一种研究取向，所以那在你的人类学研究当中，这种比较古典的文本，那放在这个脉络当中，扮演的角色，我比较想要问这个，因为这是我跟我自己在想说，有些基督教的田野调查的时候，其实我假如能够用一些文本，就很容易解释我的材料。可是我到底可不可以这样做？就是假如我要做的是田野调查，我用神学的文本，这个合法性到底在哪里？因为你刚好这样用，所以我就想跟你讨论这个问题。
从文本到生活肯定有很多隔阂的，是吧？你文本可能那个时候他刚写作这个文本这个东西的时候，他那个意义在他的那种历史环境可能跟现在完全不同。那每一个文本的东西，你会换新的环境，会有新的历史阶段。那当前的人他读这个文本会有新的体会，新的那个 interpretation， 所以这个是很重要的，就是你不能光靠那个文本，你要看现在的人他们是怎么样去用这个文本的，他们的理解是哪些方面是跟那个过去可能不同的，所以这个工作要好好的做。
谢谢杨老师非常精彩，然后有启发性的研究分享。那我的问题就是说，回到您最先提的那个问题，就是为什么就是我们赋予一个研究的物种有一个选择性，有一个主动性。那所以您就会说，哎，这个鹤喜欢这个地方 ，OK？ 那他喜欢这个地方，会不会就是喜欢这种人类的对森林的开发，然后其实它就是一个水田耕作的这个环境，他喜欢，所以这种农耕水田农耕其实也是人的文化，不是吗？所以其实这是对，就是说，这让我就是说，我们对于文化的分类跟文化的研究上，当然就会像刚刚那个陈阳提的，也许我们会去研究，就是在佛陀里面的 teaching 给我们的什么样的文化的 teaching。可是我在想，会不会是当地的一些那种就是水田耕作的灌溉系统，或是水田耕作的方法，其实也会影响它留在那边。其实这也是让我想到那个安娜庆在讲那个松茸为什么会繁殖下来，其实是人类营造这样的一个环境，让它有这个环境，所以这也是一个，就是说我们一直觉得开发不好，当然，但是一个开发出来的某些人造的一个管理的环境，反而我们也没有办法去漠视，或是说它也有可能会造成某些生物喜欢的一个互动之下的一个共生的环境。
我同意。你可以说这个稻田呢，它的好处是，它把它的那个鸟窝放在这个水中哈，它呢可以都是平地嘛，它可以看得很远，所以它就喜欢能够有这个能力看得很远，有威胁的 现象，他就很早就知道了。就像那个他们不是失败的那个 bird sanctuary、crane sanctuary， 就是太多树了，太多 bushes， 他们不喜欢，所以反然人就是他不是故意的造成这个东西，但是结果变成这些鹤非常喜爱的一个环境，就是比较那个他可以看 long distance， 但是同时，如果这个人的本地人，他们没有这种佛教的或者印度教的这个克制自己老是杀生的文化的话，他们也不一定会留在这里，因为这里本地的人一般的老百姓，当然有时候会有一些人他们要杀。那有一个朋友，他说他20年以前，他才8岁的时候，有一个村民，他是印度教的村民，杀了一个 Sarus crane， 然后闹得很大，就是所有的村子的男人都来攻击他，把他打得一套，就是打得很厉害，就说你不能做这样子对待这个鹤所以呢他就记得这个。然后另外就是他们最近10-20年他们做了很多公共的教育活动，就比如每一年他们会有 Sarus crane 节日，然后呢所有的学校都会有让学生画那个 Sarus crane。我这个朋友他说他得了奖，他很自豪，他那个时候在学校里面他的图片得了一个奖，所以呢这样子就给学生年轻人就是有一点这个深刻的印象。
Thank you. That's really inspiring and lively with video and multi-species. I have actually one comment, so sort of being inspired by this lively questions and discussion, and then also one question, short question for you, just regarding the 食物链, the food chain. I actually never thought about it. So I was wondering maybe, I mean, you kind of let me think about the concept in Buddhism called dana. It's something like you give generosity. And actually in the ancient sort of Jakarta, the Buddhist text, we usually categorize it like modern reading it as a body giving bodhisattva, or sort of what's Onyuma called the gift of body, Jangwa. But it's also the way of feeding the tiger, feeding whoever is hungry, feeding, so that was, I mean, I thought that's really interesting, just thinking about it as a food chain. And my question is, I wonder if you would like to elaborate more about the ethics. Your first point about the environmental, environmental ethics. And what I'm thinking is, I was wondering, because so you're probably very familiar with it, and Adam Chow, definitely your colleague, James Laylaw, and Anthropology of Ethics, they talk about like there are like two kinds of ethics. There's this transcendental, religious, as what you told us, and that's what Chen Yang was talking about. Chen Yang was talking about the 文本, the 神学 and the theology. And then there's also everyday life ethics, like the Lambeck and Kian. And I was wondering if you like to talk more, like, you kind of, from your talk, it seems to be this, you really beautifully show us these two ethics, two sources of ethics. And did you, I wonder if you would like to elaborate more how these two combine together and they are not sort of separate.
Well, I discovered this that in both India and Nepal, the Hindus have they don't really separate Buddhism from Hinduism, and but maybe from a Buddhist point of view, they would feel like that's you're kind of appropriating and colonizing. But from the Hindu point of view, yeah, you Buddhists, you came out of us, and you know, Buddha is an incarnation or avatar of Vishnu. Okay, so Buddhism is a different, just another version of Hinduism. So they have this, they don't see two separate religions. Yeah. Yeah. On the quest, like I was trying to show that on the question of killing sentient life, that Hinduism shares with Buddhism a lot of restrictions against killing sentient life, but Hinduism also has a much stronger ancient culture of sacrifice, you know, of blood sacrifice, and it lives on today. So all cultures have lots of contradictions, and you can see this very clearly in Hinduism today. Yeah, I mentioned that Gadimai festival, which is actually banned, legally banned, but they keep on doing it. Yeah, it's very bloody, and they won't let outsiders see it. But they all get to enjoy the meat. So they get to satisfy their meat cravings once every 5 years, because then it's religiously legal, because this was a sacrificial meat that you could eat. So I think Hinduism has more ambivalence and prevarication about killing of sentient life. Yeah. And Hinduism also has, you know, something like Bhagavad Gita is all about Arjun, who is, that's part of the Mahabharata. And it's about Arjun, who is faced with killing his relatives in a, you know, such armies where they facing off each other, and Arjun loses his confidence. I said, how can I kill so many people and shed so much blood? And Krishna actually encourages him. You've got to act. So it was a kind of this worldly message. You gotta, you know, even though it's very distasteful, you've got to make your decisions in this world, and you've got to act. So, so there are differences. Whereas Buddhism, I think, is much more quietistic. Yeah, and so Buddhism is much more associated with peace, lovingness, and so on. So, yeah. But, you know, often the peace lovers don't win. Right? So.
张文琴，然后李梅君。
我想请问一个问题，就是你如何区辨 differentiate intuition and agency？ 那在你的演讲里面，你会用 agency 这一个字，来说明赫 Crane 他们的一个选择居住的行为。那我的问题是，不管是人或者是动物，在 agency 用这个字的时候，跟 intuition 它会不会有一个 boundary？ 那你怎么样来区辨它们？
就是 difference between crane agency and human agency.
讲到那个食物链的问题，那有时候就说人去杀生，那人去杀生这个也跟动物，当然人我们会说它是万物之灵，那所以这个里面就是有很多层次，我们怎么样去区辨什么时候用 agency， 什么时候用 intuition， 不管是人或者是动物。
Yeah. Intuition 你说是 genetic coding， 你认为是 genetic coding 生物的本能。Instinct, yeah, instinct。我觉得分不开这么清楚，它是一个 gradation, yeah。那当然动物它们在语言上面，它们没有文字，而且它们也没有嘴巴可以发出声音来 ，right？ 我们人有这个东西，但是他们还有其他的那个 communication 方式就是我们自己养的那个宠物，这些宠物有它的方式跟我们 communicate， 表达他们的愿望。So 这是一个 continuum， 不是一个，因为常常道家已经说过了，就是这个语言是非常可以说语言是非常 misleading， can play tricks on us。语言它概括一个东西，然后呢，我们就真正的认为这个东西 exists， 但是呢，其实你去多去观察的时候，你会觉得这个东西是多样性的，它不是就是一个 stamp， 一个方式的。So我觉得我们要小心，我们就是用语言，我们很习惯用语言 create 一个 category， 但是它这个 category 有历史性的，它在某一个历史阶段，某一个情况的时刻，它会表达自己不同，用不同的方式表达自己。这个也是Pierre Bourdieu practice theory 他提到的 ，right？ 就是也是你不能就是 just take for granted 一个 language category。This goes back to your question of décollat, right? So I think that Bourdieu was writing against structuralism, okay? Who believed that these categories really exist and pretty much don't change, okay? So if you were Bourdieu, then you see the play of different interests and different concerns in every different situation. So this also goes back to the question of how do you link up or differentiate the textual, scriptural authority from everyday life? Well, as we all know, people following a certain religious culture violate it all the time. Okay, they don't always violate the same thing. They violate it when a certain historical circumstance or situation caused them to want to kind of selectively put that religious scriptural teaching into practice. Sometimes they just ignore certain teachings. And, human beings are very contradictory. And for Bourdieu, he pointed to the importance of time, right? Time, like, he wrote on gift, right? So it's a calculation, it's a strategy. Hey, I receive a gift from you. When is the best time to return the gift? Under what circumstances? There's strategizing and calculation going on. And there's history going on. Right? So everything is very alive and movable and changeable. We just have to get used to that. Yeah, so language creates categories that kind of mislead us. We just think, oh yes, the sacred, that's always going to be the same. But no, people of a certain religious culture, they'll be very selective about when they'll consider this thing sacred. Sometimes they'll just ignore it.
杨老师你好，这样非常精彩的演讲哦。那我从你的演讲中听到这个在围绕着 Queen 的整个尼泊尔的非常多的行动者在这个互动之中哦，这里面包含了 local farmers， 包含了NGO 的行动者，包含 scientists， 包含了 local government 跟这个 education 的这些 institution 哦。那你也在您的结论中提到这个 human crime 的 symbiosis 的一种好像在生成的一个过程哦。那我其实比较好奇的是，您在结论的最后一句的最后一段，这个 asymmetrical 那个不均等的，甚至是说 tension 的面向。我这个问题是来自于您在谈 Queen 的时候，其实让我想到台湾，对于台湾黑熊做一个台湾的一种象征的时候，我们过去很长一段时间说它是一个濒临的物种，所以其实花了很多的科学上的资源跟很多的保育的想法，然后去富裕黑熊这个物种。但近年来，其实黑熊的人口是黑熊的熊口是增加的，但是也有黑熊开始就是因为它们领域性开始在一些比较近山的边缘有对部落或一些村庄有一些骚扰的现象，可能会去吃狗啊，或者是人的养的一些鸡鸭什么的。那后来就是台湾就有一个很有名的案例，是因为这样的侵扰下就被射杀了一只黑熊。所以其实这个很复杂的生态系中，我很好奇的是您的故事里面有没有那个 tension 的存在哦？就是说这个 tension 是说它不只是 symbiosis， 实际上不同的行动者在之中可能会有不一样的思考跟他的角色跟他的利益。那这还有另外一个台湾很出名的案子是野生保护跟动物保护之间的冲突。比如说动物保护是比较就是说所有的动物，特别是对于犬猫的保护。可是在台湾，另外还有就是野生的保护是认为犬猫它其实是外来物种，其实会对于 wild animal 是很大的危害。所以不只是人跟动物之间可能有一些不同的 tension，人跟人围绕着 crime 之间的人跟人之间，我很好奇它有没有不一样的 politics and tension 存在。谢谢。
我觉得我们需要比较小心，不要把科学跟宗教对立起来因为我今天说的就是给大家看它的传统的宗教其实是有这种保护动物的这个很强的内容 ，right？ 不光是科学而且可能是科学在关心野生物的过程中，他必须要学会怎么把自己的东西翻译成宗教的语言，这样子老百姓比较能够理解，比较能够接受。我觉得这是一个这个翻译的这个过程是很重要的呀，因为你就是科学，如果就是国家的力量代表科学高高在上，你进来，你们原住民就是落后，就是不行，这个不对的，什么什么，你当然进展不会很多的 ，right？ 所以这个是常常科学家忘掉了，他们必须把自己的关心的东西要翻译成这个就是要花一点功夫去了解原住民的文化，怎么用他们的话语，怎么用他们的价值观来表达科学的关系当然这个就是比较复杂，而且要花更多的时间去做。OK， 非常感谢哈。
今天这个李议员先生第8届的讲座就在这边结束哈，谢谢各位。然后下午1点半就回到这边，那现在中午呢要去交谊厅吃便当。好，谢谢各位。